Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines. US President Donald Trump says that Venezuela's interim authorities will turn over 30 million to 50 billion barrels of sanctioned oil to the US to be sold at market price. Trump said the funds from the sales will be controlled by US. Venezuela's interim president Delcy Rodriguez says that her government is fully in charge of the country and denied that any foreign power governs it, pushing back against US President Donald Trump's statement that Washington would run Venezuela. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado vows to return quickly and praises Donald Trump for toppling Nicolas Maduro, but Trump appears keen to work with interim President Delcy Rodriguez for now, adding to uncertainty in Venezuela. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen says that Denmark and Greenland have requested a rapid meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to address misunderstandings after President Donald Trump renewed claims over Greenland. Ukraine's allies gather in Paris to finalize security guarantees to reassure Kyiv in the event of a ceasefire with Russia. President Zelensky joins more than 27 leaders and senior US negotiators as they work on a joint position for future talks. Activists say at least 35 people are killed and over 1,200 detained as protests continue across Iran with no sign of stopping. Reports say unrest has spread nationwide as authorities and security forces also report injuries amid rising tension. Four people are killed in clashes between government personnel and Kurdish-led forces in Aleppo, with both sides blaming each other. State media says the defense ministry member dies, while reports say two women were killed as responsibility remains disputed. China is reviewing Meta's $2 billion purchase of AI firm Manus over possible technology export control issues, a move that could give Beijing leverage over the deal. Alright viewers, let's start with the top focus. US President Donald Trump has confirmed that many Cuban soldiers were killed by US forces in the capture of ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Trump made the comments during a speech to Republican members of US House of Representatives. According to reports, Trump appears to hope for now to work with interim President Delcy Rodriguez and other senior officials from Maduro's government, disappointing the opposition and contributing to nervousness in Venezuela. Meanwhile, Venezuela will be turning over 30 to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil to the US. He also mentioned that the money earned will be used for the people of Venezuela and the United States. Let's hear that statement from Trump.
It was so complex, 152 airplanes, many, talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. But it was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed. Unfortunately, I say that, soldiers. Cubans, mostly Cubans, but many killed. And they knew we were coming, and they were protected, and our guys weren't. You know, our guys are jumping out of helicopters, and you're not protected, and they were. But it was so brilliant. The electricity for almost the entire country was, boom, turned off. That's when they knew there was a problem. There was no electricity.
All right, now joining me in this discussion is Spencer Critchley. He's a communications strategist and joins us from California. Thank you very much, Mr. Critchley, for joining me in this discussion. Now, Trump is clearly taking over the oil reserves of Venezuela, and the reason that he cites is to fund his own campaign. How do you see the legality of the actions that Trump is going to pursue?
Unfortunately, I think it's clearly illegal. It's illegal under U.S. law and it's illegal under international law. Now, many will point to the fact that many Venezuelans are celebrating, unsurprisingly, the removal of a vicious and corrupt dictator. I would certainly sympathize with them. I have no sympathy whatsoever for Maduro. However, Trump himself has made it clear that this has nothing to do with any legitimate defense concerns of the United States. We are not under attack by Venezuela. It has nothing to do with seeking to restore democracy to Venezuela. Obviously, he's entirely willing to work with the Maduro regime. He simply removed Maduro and seems to be choosing to work with all of the other repressive elements and corrupt elements that make up the rest of that regime. And he's made it clear that his primary interest here is seizing control of the oil. So this is just pure corrupt power politics. And it's not just morally and legally wrong, it's stupid and counterproductive, in my opinion, from the point of view of the United States. By doing this, Trump brings to an end essentially U.S. leadership for the past 80 years following World War II by destroying trust in the United States.
Would you also say that it's actually a shift away from his own MAGA campaign promises, where he said that U.S. will not be involved in wars of any other nation? And let's remember that this is a president who had sought the Nobel Peace Prize for himself, the Peace Prize, and then he goes on to launch this aggressive military campaign in another country, capture its leader.
Oh, absolutely. It contradicts his promises to be the president of peace. He was boasting about that just a few months ago. You may remember one of his frequent talking points was to claim he had brought an end to, I think he got the number up to 8 wars, supposedly,
9,
single-handedly, including the conflict between Pakistan and India, to the great annoyance, of course, of India at hearing that claim. Now, all of a sudden, he's the president of military intervention, apparently, and essentially 19th century imperialism. This should surprise nobody, however. Trump's stories change not just daily, but often from hour to hour or even minute to minute. His justification for the buildup of force off Venezuela started out as stopping the flow of fentanyl, supposedly. Fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. Then it became, stopping cocaine. And claims that that's all this was about. And then the moment this raid took place, all of a sudden the whole point was oil.
Well, that's very clear. Trump is a businessman, and that's where his interest lies, and he will go after any territory, nation state, any other area which has rich resources, and that's also evident from his push to take over Greenland. How do you see his approach on Greenland now?
Again, a combination of morally wrong, illegal, and stupid. If you think about the present situation, I just referred to U.S. leadership for the past 80 years since the end of World War II, which was based on the United States committing not to conquer, starting with the nations of Europe, starting with Germany and Japan, but to help rebuild the world and to work cooperatively with everybody else who wanted to work cooperatively. Now, the U.S. has failed to live up to that ideal sometimes, but the ideal has been the basis of trust in the United States and people being more or less at ease with the enormous power that the United States has accrued. Where that brings us today is the U.S. is the wealthiest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world, and Trump somehow seems to think that we're in terrible shape and we're being exploited by everybody else. But if Greenland were to be attacked, say by Russia today, or the United States were to be threatened by Russia or any other foreign power today, all of the 32 NATO countries would be bound to come to our assistance, just as they did after the September 11th, 2001 attacks. If Trump seizes Greenland, either by force or simply by occupying it, that brings NATO to an end, as the head of Denmark recently pointed out. That means that if the United States is attacked, and let's say that the United States has Greenland at that point, we're on our own. And so, as I say, it makes us much, much weaker by chasing away all our allies. So not only morally and legally wrong, but utterly stupid.
Yeah. And finally, as far as the Venezuela question is now concerned and the transfer of oil, Trump is saying he's going to work with Rodriguez. Do you think that will be a collaboration that he is looking for?
No, I mean, clearly he just wants to be the boss. It was almost funny, it would be funny if it weren't so terribly serious, to watch Secretary of State Marco Rubio in one moment try to claim this was not about oil, this was about democracy and security, and that no, we would not be running Venezuela. And within moments, Trump was saying, it is about oil, and yes, we will be running Venezuela. I don't think Trump has any interest whatsoever in sharing with the Venezuelan people beyond the minimum that he might have to perform in order to try to put a fig leaf over this. As he has said himself, the point of this is to move in U.S. oil companies and pull wealth out of the ground, in his phrase. He told U.S. oil companies, or at least hinted strongly to them, that this was coming before he mentioned a word of it to Congress. That had to wait until after it had happened. I just think that every way you look at this, it's corrupt, it's illegal, and it's stupid, and it just makes the U.S. weaker, while, by the way, making Russia and China stronger, because there's no way that the United States can lecture Putin that it was wrong of him to invade Ukraine and he should leave, because the United States is doing exactly the same thing. And there's no way that the United States can lecture Xi Jinping that he should stay out of Taiwan. Just terrible every way you look at it.
Okay. Sure, Mr. Critchley, thanks for your comments there, but I request you to stay on. There's some breaking news now coming in that we'd like to give our viewers. Now, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake has struck 68 kilometers east of Bacolod in the Philippines at a depth of 10 kilometers. Philippines Seismology Agency PHIVOLIC said that the damage and aftershocks were expected from the offshore tremor. There are no immediate reports of damage or injuries from the earthquake. Local and national emergency teams are currently evaluating the area for infrastructure damage and potential casualties. All right, and we now move on to news on the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, security protocols for Ukraine are nearing completion as the US and key European allies move closer to formalizing long-term security guarantees. At a Paris summit of the Coalition of the Willing, Washington confirmed strong backing for measures designed to deter future Russian attacks and defend Ukraine if violations occur. France says signed guarantees, including multinational force planning, would prevent renewed aggression and protect any future peace deal. Britain maintains peace may be closer, but warns the toughest phase still lies ahead, pledging continued pressure on Moscow and support for ceasefire monitoring. Poland says transatlantic unity remains intact, stressing sustained sanctions and logistical support while ruling out troop deployments. Germany says Ukraine's reconstruction and security are inseparable, adding Berlin's support in the future will keep all options open. And I'd request now Mr. Critchley to join me back in the discussion here. Mr. Critchley, now, how important do you think at this point in time is the transatlantic alliance? Because the new security strategy that was revealed of the US was not particularly in a lot of favor for the Europe. Trump had also gone on to, suggest that it was not happy with European Union leaders, and that was also the reaction that had gone then from European Union leaders. Now, after his campaign in Venezuela, how important do you think is to appease his European allies as far as the Ukraine war is concerned and the security guarantees that Zelensky seeks?
I think this is an extremely serious situation, and we could see that in the alarm evinced in the rapid issuance of a statement by the leading heads of state who were gathered in Paris today. The United States, of course, is the lead partner in NATO, and the whole formation of NATO after World War II was designed to be led by the United States with its vastly larger military forces. And of course, the point was to deter Russian expansion westward. This, of course, being a very live threat after the defeat of Nazi Germany, with the Soviet Union moving westward as fast as it could and being stopped, well into Eastern and Central Europe. To have Trump setting the example he just set with the invasion of Venezuela, thereby giving justification, apparently, to Vladimir Putin and creating utter moral confusion about the difference between the free nations of the West and the oppressed nation of Russia, is potentially fatal to NATO, especially with Trump, as I was just saying, threatening to take Greenland from a NATO partner. This would make the United States a threat to NATO. And I think, as Mette Frederiksen of Denmark pointed out correctly, would destroy NATO, thereby greatly weakening NATO and Europe in general, which of course is why the Europeans are scrambling now, along with Canada, to build up their own defensive capabilities. And the terrible tragedy of this is they have to also be looking at the United States as a potential threat. God forbid it should ever come to any kind of military conflict, but it doesn't have to greatly weaken the West, and as I say, strengthen the hand of Putin in China and any other dictator who thinks that power justifies whatever you can get away with.
And how will Trump be able to strike this delicate balance? Because, Russia can any day now come up and say, look what you've done in Venezuela. How can you stop me from doing this campaign in Ukraine? Trump has a tough task as far as Russia also now is concerned, wouldn't you say?
I think Trump has no talent for delicate balances, no interest in them, and he's not going to disturb himself one little bit about that. He's perfectly comfortable being completely inconsistent to the point of chaos in his impulsive decision making, which seems really only to be driven by his psychological needs. I think people should, not dignify Trump's thinking by assuming there's some kind of strategy behind it. He has literally described his desire to take over Canada and Greenland as being based on how beautiful he thinks the map would look. He described himself as a very aesthetic person and was talking about how he looks at the map of the United States, Canada, and Greenland and just sees that it's unbalanced and it needs to be balanced by expanding northward. This is literally the level of his thinking and decision making, and it's both comical in an extremely dark form of comedy and tragic that the security of the world hangs in the balance that is not being maintained in his unbalanced mind.
All right. Thanks then very much, Mr. Critchley, for speaking to us here at NewsX World and giving us your time. And with that, viewers, let's move ahead to some more news. Now, Democrats have accused the Republicans 5 years after the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol of a whitewash history. Let's listen in to what Democrats have said.
The January 6th violent attack on the Capitol that took place 5 years ago today was shameful then, it is shameful now, and it will be shameful always and forever. We must continue to learn from what happened on January 6th in order to make sure that it never happens again.
I am deeply grateful for this chance to try to make amends and talk about what happened 5 years ago. Once I got away from the mega cult and started educating myself about January the 6th, I knew what I did was wrong. I pleaded guilty to my crimes because I did the crime. I received due process, and the DOJ was not weaponized against me. When Donald Trump pardoned us, I rejected the pardon. Accepting that pardon would be lying about what happened on January the 6th. I am guilty.
Meanwhile, on the 5th anniversary of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, supporters of U.S. President Donald Trump gathered. However, the members of the far-right Proud Boys have marched towards the Capitol, sparking counter-protest in a heavy police presence. Let's listen to what the Proud Boys members have said.
For 4 years, not just in the criminal system, in the civil system, Americans were weaponized against. And the word that I'm searching, and the thing that I'm searching for is retribution. That's right. Retaliation. And what is that? Accountability. It is accountability. I don't want any violence to happen to those people that perpetrated these crimes against humanity, against Americans. But I want them to pay. That's right. They made an example out of us, that's right, and we need to make an example out of them.
All right, now moving ahead, Iranian protests have turned deadly with an Iranian policeman shot dead during demonstrations in the country's western Ilam province. The incident comes as unrest over economic hardship enters its 10th day and continues to intensify. At the same time, an Iran-focused rights group says at least 27 protesters have been killed since the movement began, including 5 minors. The group alleges security forces opened fire on demonstrators in multiple provinces, with several deaths reported in the same district where clashes were earlier reported. The rights group also claims wounded protesters were arrested during hospital raids as demonstrations spread to more than 24 provinces and multiple universities nationwide. Iranian officials tallies report lower casualty figures, including deaths among members of the security forces. I request Adrian Culliman, who's a terrorism scholar, to join me in this discussion, and he comes from New York. Thank you very much, Adrian, for joining me in this discussion, and we apologize to keep you waiting. But Adrian, what do you think is next for Iran? How is it going to bail itself out of the situation that it is in right now?
Great to see you, Kriti. Thank you for having me on the show again, and good morning to all your viewers. The Islamic Republic is in a really critical juncture right now, and I think this is kind of going underreported because we've seen so many protests over the years, especially if you look in recent years since 2017, December 2017, we've had roaming protests throughout the country. And I heard you mention in the lead up, it's focused on the economy and the economics, and that absolutely is one of the factors for the people that are protesting because they've seen their wealth absolutely robbed from them, with the government and the IRGC owning roughly 70–80% of the economy. They see them rebuilding their military and the people losing their savings. So it's about the brutality that they've faced. It's about things such as the Mahsa Amini murder, the Kurdish woman who was taken away by the morality police. It's one of the most, and why I think this may be a point where the regime really is on, on its days could be numbers, because the Bazaris, the individuals who run the economy underneath the IRGC, the individuals who are able to kind of find a space in between the impoverished and the regime, they hold a fair amount of power within the country, and in the past we haven't seen them rise up, and so what we're seeing is them rise up. We're seeing transportation networks, groups, unions rise up. We're seeing police not fire on civilians, actually waving to protesters. And then, of course, we're seeing the regime using the repressive tactics where the numbers that they're quoting right now, I would estimate that the death toll is much higher. So the regime is really in a shaky place, especially because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but their nuclear program is still alive. That is not dead. And there has been movement. There's been assets being moved, I would say, from people that aren't aligned with the with Iran. And so the concern is that there very well could be another strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities, especially the one in the Natanz and Pickaxe Mountains. It's been estimated that that didn't receive any real damage and take it offline. So they're dealing with external threats and a real internal threat. And what's going to ultimately overthrow the regime is the internal threat, the people that have just had enough of this.
But beyond regime change, would you say Iran is actually just rewriting its entire civilizational story?
Rewriting its civilizational story? How's that?
With the protests that are coming up and the attacks that are there, do you think this is more than just a regime change? It's coming up with nuclear weapons that you're saying. It's pretty much alive. Talks on the nuclear plan haven't really proceeded further.
Yeah, what I see is the Iranian people who, and the Persian people, and the many people that, the Kurds, all the different people that comprise the proud Iranian people, trying to restore the rightful place of this once great nation that has been hijacked for the last 47 years now. We have to remember, this is the Persian nation is the nation that freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity. They have a long storied history that has been hijacked by this religious fanaticism that has infected Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen with the Houthis, the Iraqi militias. I mean, I could go on and on throughout the region with their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, all these different groups. So the Iranian people, they're not rewriting history. They're trying to set it back on the correct course is the way I would look at it. And as far as regime change, there are people that can come in and take the place. As much as they have tried, the Islamic Republic, to crush civil society, there are still very capable people both inside and outside the country that can come back and rebuild the country.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is from Persia to Iran to now a new Iran that's gone through waves of de-Islamization. We'll watch out how the developments proceed in the country. But thanks very much, Adrian, for joining me in this discussion for now. Unfortunately, running short on time, so I've had to let you go. But with that, viewers, let's also bring you some news from tech. Now, Chinese officials are reviewing Meta's $2 billion acquisition of artificial intelligence startup Manus for possible technology control violations. Manus went viral early this year after it released what it claimed was the world's first general AI agent capable of making decisions and executing tasks autonomously with much less prompting required than AI chatbots such as ChatGPT and DeepSeek. According to reports, the review is in its preliminary stages and may not lead to a formal investigation. The need for a license could provide Beijing with an avenue to influence the transaction. And that's all we have time for. Do keep watching NewsX World for more international news and updates from around the world.